doing the live through, let me put it this way. I'm not doing the live from my office or studio. I'm outside Toronto at Wasaga Beach, next to Georgian Bay, and I'm running the live from our car. So anyways, while we're waiting for our friends to join us, let me briefly explain to you what's going on in the world of immigration. In fact, it's been very quiet recently. Last week we didn't see much of a movement in the world of immigration. We didn't see any specific draws for express entry or major movements by the immigration authorities. However, based on my personal experience, we had little interactions with some of the visa offices out there, which was a sign that maybe some of the visa offices are going to start processing applications. But generally speaking, very quiet, very quiet. As usual, I receive on a daily basis messages about people that they receive procedural fairness letters about misrepresentation and other issues, and that basically brings my attention to the importance of knowing about good morning. By the way, because I'm using my cell phone, so I may miss some of your chat messages. Sorry about that, but I just saw Sam J said good morning, so good morning to you. Yeah, so in terms of misrepresentation, keep that in mind. Misrepresentation could put you into huge trouble. Please take it seriously. I mean, by misrepresentation, it means if you hide information from immigration authorities, if you alter documents, if you present fraudulent documents to the immigration authorities, any kind of those activities, even if it's an innocent mistake, it could put you in trouble, because a misrepresentation could result in inadmissibility to Canada for 5 years. So if you're outside Canada, you may not apply for permanent residence for 5 years. And of course, if you apply for temporary residence, they will refuse your application because you are inadmissible to Canada. If you are inside Canada and receive misrepresentation, then there is a chance that they will pursue this through CBSA, and CBSA will basically make you inadmissible, but remove you from Canada. They issue an exclusion order, and that exclusion order is valid for 5 years. It means that you have to leave Canada and you cannot come back to Canada. Of course, there are some solutions to misrepresentation. For example, if somebody is outside Canada, we sometimes can apply for a temporary resident permit. Sometimes we can fight with the immigration authorities and try to cancel misrepresentation and so on. So we have to be very careful with misrepresentation, but in certain situations there are some solutions around misrepresentation. If somebody is inside Canada and they receive a misrepresentation, again, an option would be to apply for a temporary resident permit. And for those of you who do not know what temporary resident permit is, it's basically a permit that allows a person to remain in Canada despite being inadmissible to Canada. But however, you need to justify that. You need to show that the reasons that basically you want to be in Canada or you want to move to Canada overweigh the reasons behind inadmissibility to Canada. And that's not an easy process. We need to consider the extent of misrepresentation, the documents that you have, the best interest of a child, hardship, humanitarian reasons, controversial issues, and so on. But it's a possibility. So there is a couple of questions. Before I miss them, let me answer them and then I come back. So please tell me about appeal of failed refugee claims. Due to pandemic, they offer us position distance and how many months they take for the decision. Thank you. Well, generally speaking, for the appeals, they do not hold hearings anyways. And how long will it will take them to process? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, it's such a huge mess right now because of coronavirus that whatever time frame I offer to you could be something else. So just as you know, because you still may remain in Canada, your removal order stays because you filed for an appeal. So you continue being a refugee claimant for as long as it takes for them to process the application. And I hope they process it very soon and you know that you become a permanent resident. So how can I see the chats? Because I saw the chats. Okay, so I answered this. The next one. So Abu Dhabi visa office are working because my paper application are sent there from IRCC have been 1 and 6 months, and our private sponsorship refugee applications free from restrictions. So what I can tell you about Abu Dhabi, at least my personal experience right now, I have some applications over there that they are still sitting. They are not refugee applications, they are work permit applications, and despite several follow-ups, they are not processing the applications. I have actually one application that is waiting over there for 15 months, believe it or not. And the application is one of those applications that presumably they need to be processed within 2 weeks, and still it's there. So Rupesh, hi Rupesh, what was the question? Hello Mr. Parsai, thank you for your guidance and suggestions on start a visa program. Can you please advise, okay, so please do not ask issues related to our, dealings on a public forum. If you have any specific request about your case or those kind of things, please email us. You have access to us. Okay, so Samjay currently working less than a year, close to work permit, LMI exempt, but worked with same employer 1 year under PGWP. In this case, can I claim 50 CRS job offer points? So I cannot comment, Sam, on your specific case, but generally speaking, in terms of a job offer for those 50 points, there are a few things that need to happen. Number one is that you currently hold a work permit and working for an employer, and the name of the employer is on that work permit. And the other thing is that you have worked for the same employer for at least 1 year. And the other issue is that you have actually working under NAC 0A or B. So this is a very generic answer to your question. But for the specifics of your case, if you want, you can book an appointment with me and I will look at that. Okay. So another one is that, good morning, brother. Hope you're good. I got the pre-arrival letter. What is the next step? So generally speaking, pre-arrival letters, oh, no worries, Rupesh. It's just that, it's better to have private conversations private. So generally speaking, that pre-arrival letter means nothing. I mean, of course, it's a good sign that you will likely will be passport requested soon, or you will likely receive, final decision of the immigration officers, but don't count on that. I have had clients that they actually received a pre-arrival letter, but unfortunately, after the pre-arrival letter, there were complications in the case, and even I had one case that the application got refused after that. But it's very rare. They usually issue the pre-arrival letter when they want to approve a case. And also, of course, the pre-arrival letter on its own allows you to register for some of the services that the government of Canada offers to you upon arrival in Canada. So it's a good idea, if you read that carefully, go to the link and read the content of that link, and if you want, sign up for those services as well. How long will it take from the pre-arrival letter to receive the passport request or receive your COPR? Honestly, nobody can predict that because of so many complications that exist right now thanks to situation of COVID-19. By the way, do you hear me well? Because it's a relatively noisy situation. Okay, so while we're waiting for more questions, oh yeah, yes, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So what is the salary of a newly graduated immigration consultant who has got a 6 months diploma in Toronto? So Martin, generally speaking, majority of immigration consultants, they work independently. They do not work for another person. However, if you have received your license and also another firm is hiring you. Honestly, I've never worked for another firm, so I don't know the exact salaries, but I think based on what I have seen on Indeed and other websites, probably the starting salary is anywhere between $40,000 to $60,000 per year, but maybe I'm wrong. Nakbi, yes, my work permit mentioned employer. So that's great, Sam. Congratulations. But as I mentioned again, I cannot comment on the specifics of your case because I don't know everything about your case. So whatever I'm saying here is very general, but that's true. If somebody meets all necessary requirements, then they will receive their 50 points. So as I was telling you, be careful with inadmissibility issues to Canada. So misrepresentation is the big one. Believe it or not, I'm not exaggerating. I receive at least 4 or 5 messages per day regarding inadmissibility to Canada. Most of the messages that I receive are about misrepresentation, and the immigration authorities take misrepresentation very seriously. So be careful with that. So one more question. Hi Sarah, biometrics were done 2 years ago before. Oh, I missed your, so what happened? Oh, okay. But when we apply now to work permit in the form biometrics done in last 10 years, we don't remember, we put yes or no, should we send them web form? So basically, if you have your UCI, there is a link on IRCC website that you can check the validity of your biometrics. So if you Google, are my biometrics valid? Then it will redirect you to the link on IRCC website. And then on the IRCC website, there are a bunch of questions they ask, not many, it's just like your date of birth, your UCI, your last name, something like that. And then it will tell you whether your biometrics are valid or not. Keep in mind that when you apply for, when you do your biometrics for temporary residence, then it is by default only valid for temporary residents. So in other words, if you, for example, did your biometrics 2 years ago for a work permit, and now you're applying for, say, a study permit or another work permit or a temporary resident visa, then it is very likely your biometrics are still valid, because the biometrics are valid for a duration of up to 10 years. The only time that your biometrics become invalid is that 10 years has passed since you did your biometrics, or you have major changes in your facial appearance. Then it is in your best interest to do the biometrics, because biometrics, what does it mean? It means that it's a picture of your face, and of course fingerprints, but picture of your face is important because when you show up at the port of entry, they compare your face with the picture they have in the biometric system. So if your facial appearance has changed significantly, and by facial appearance I don't mean if you have grown beard, no, but for example, if you had a nose surgery or facial restructure surgery, any kind of those things, then it is in your best interest that you do your biometrics again. But if those situations has not occurred and the officers have not canceled your biometrics. I had a couple of cases that the officers actually canceled the biometrics of my clients. If none of those have happened, then you're good to go. It should be okay. But to be on the safe side, my recommendation is to definitely go on that link on IRCC website, enter your UCI, and see if your biometrics are valid. And UCI, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a unique client identification. It's a number that the immigration authorities assign to a person, not to an application, to a person. So each of us who have interacted with the immigration authorities at one point, that one point could be sponsoring a family member, applying for a visa or immigration to Canada, applying for work permit or study permit, whatever interaction you have, as soon as you have that interaction with the immigration authorities, they issue you a UCI number. UCI numbers used to be 8 digits. So in the past, UCI number was 8 digits, but a few years ago, when they realized the number of people who interact with the immigration authorities are a lot, they changed it to a 10-digit system. So if you have recently, in the past, I believe 4 or 5 years, have applied for immigration, your UCI is 10 digits. If you have interacted with them a long time ago, then your UCI is 8 digits. You can locate UCI on most of the correspondences that you receive from the immigration authorities. So if you have received an email from them at some point, they send you a letter at some point. If you look at that, you see that it says client ID or UCI or unique client identification or client number, and look at those 8 digits or 10-digit number, and that's the number we're looking at. If you do not see UCI on correspondence from the immigration authorities, then if you have a visa sticker in your passport, UCI is also there. It's roughly on the lower right corner of somewhere in the middle though, on the lower right corner of the sticker. So take a look at that, and you can see whether where your UCI is. I have an article about UCI on my website. You can also locate that, and then based on that, you can. I have a picture of the visa sticker, so you can clearly see where the UCI is. Just Google immigration file number and UCI, and usually my article is on the first page. Or go on settler.ca, our website, and look at that. Okay, so that's about validity of biometrics. And oh, by the way, something happened with the upfront medical examination. So if you're applying for express entry, if you are inside Canada, by default you have to do upfront medical examination. It means that while you're submitting your application, you also need to go to a panel physician, a doctor that is approved by the immigration authorities, and then that panel physician will run some tests like physical tests, etc., and then they will generate a report, and then they will send that report to the immigration authorities. They give you 2 documents. One is the information sheet. The other one is IMM 1017B form. You need to upload those to your express entry profile. Having said that, this is only mandatory for those people who apply under express entry inside Canada. If you're applying for express entry and you're outside Canada, you just upload an explanation letter and explain the situation to them. Now, if you are inside Canada and you book an appointment with a doctor, but the appointment is to the point that you cannot upload these documents before the action, then in that situation, you can actually delay it. So just show proof that you in fact submitted your documents, information from your doctor. You can upload them through web form. but it is in your best interest that early on, as soon as you receive an invitation to apply, you book an appointment with the doctor. Just prevent any future delays or complications. I also recorded a video about upfront medical exam. It's my last video. I just posted that about 30 hours ago. So if you like, you can also watch that for more information about your medical. So the next question, proof of funds, CC, can I submit spouse? Okay, I lost it now. Sorry. So the next question is for proof of funds. So remember that for Canadian Experience class, generally speaking, proof of funds is not necessary. Proof of funds is for federal skilled worker or federal skilled trades if you do not have a job offer. But however, for Canadian Experience class, the officers ask for proof of funds anyways. So they just say, what is your, how much money do you have in your account? So if by default, if it's below the threshold of LICO for 6 months, it should be okay. Because there is no settlement funds for Canadian Experience class. Having said that, I always ask my clients to provide the proof of funds just in case, to convince the authorities. I've had some clients that they didn't have enough money and nothing negative happened because the law doesn't request settlement funds for Canadian Experience class. So that's the simple answer to that. Again, I don't know your case. I cannot offer advice to you. In terms of can somebody use their spouse's funds, generally speaking, the answer is yes, because when two people are married, their financials could be considered in support of each other, and it doesn't need to be under the name of one specific person. Now, if somebody wants to stay away from any sort of complications, you can just transfer the money from your wife's account to your account, you know. But generally speaking, it's not necessary because, as I mentioned, for CEC, we don't even need proof of funds. So the next question, I'm 36, my wife 29. For my study permit, my wife should apply open work permit alongside me, or my shoulder apply for work permit after I complete 1 month study in Canada. She's on job in our country. Okay. So again, I cannot offer advice because I don't know your case. But generally speaking, when somebody is applying for a study permit, their spouse is qualified for applying for an open work permit. Now, can they apply together? The simple answer is yes, they can apply together. Now, generally speaking, we would say if somebody applies on their own and then their spouse applies after the study permit is issued, it's probably better because, you know, because of the fact that if they refuse the application, you only face one refusal, and maybe it will help you in securing the study permit. Having said that, I have submitted applications with both formats. I mean, the applicant first and the spouse next, and or together, and we have had the same number of, you know, approval rates. So I didn't see any specific differences, major differences that convinced me, you know, I have to apply separately or together. I think it's more of a risk tolerance of people, whether they are okay with, you know, exposing themselves to risk and they face 2 refusals at the same time, or 3 refusals if they have children. Or on the other hand is that many people cannot stay away from their family. They really want to go to Canada together, and they won't accept to apply separately. So these are some of the conversations that we constantly have with our clients, and then based on their risk tolerance and their situation and their final decisions, because sometimes The spouse doesn't even want to come right now to Canada. They're working or they're studying. So based on their situations, we decide what would be the best way to move forward. And it's very difficult to come up with a specific answer for everybody. But statistically speaking, I haven't seen major differences between applying together or separately. Okay, so the next one is that, good morning, can a refugee go back to their country if the status of the country becomes safe? How does go about that? Thanks. So generally speaking, when you become a refugee, it means that Canada offers you protection. And when Canada offers you protection because they have agreed with you that you are not safe in your home country. If you feel safe in your home country, then Canada can discontinue their protection because they say, okay, you don't need our protection anymore, so we cancel that. And this could happen, especially if the refugee is still a protected person, they have not become a permanent resident, or they are a permanent resident and they have not become a Canadian citizen. Because as soon as they become a Canadian citizen, the situation is different. They are citizens and they have the right to be a citizen. Now, in the past, the different governments of Canada, they have tried to challenge refugees in that issue, to take away their permanent residence from them or their protection from them, because now they traveled back to their home country. This is not out of question. I had a case of a protected person. We had a hearing. The hearing was not about removing his protection, but as part of our negotiations with the Minister's Council, she brought this up that, by the way, if your client applies for permanent residence, we could potentially take away their permanent residence or protection from them because they have traveled back to their home country. So this is a dangerous thing to do. And of course, if somebody feels safe in their home country, that's a different story. They can go back to their home country. However, they cannot expect the Canadian government to continue offering them protection if they don't need that protection. So the next question is, hello, employment location of city mentioned on open work permit but not restricted in conditions, can work anywhere or should be amended. So generally speaking, you need to respect the restrictions mentioned on the work permit, whatever those restrictions are. So if the restriction is a geographical location, they say you can only work in this specific city, then you are not allowed to work outside that city. If you want to work in another city, then you need to send a request to the immigration authorities and ask them to allow you to work in the other city. That's the standard way of doing this, because if they investigate and they find out that you have worked in another city, then the employer could face problems. In fact, the employer is in infraction of the Immigration Act Section 124 sub C of the Act, which under Section 125 of the Act has up to $50,000 in fines and up to 2 years in prison, just because of hiring a person in a capacity that they are not allowed to work. Now, will they actually put a person in 2 years in jail because they hired somebody that person was supposed to work, for example, in Regina, but now they have hired that person in Saskatoon? It's very unlikely, but still, the employer will face problems. Now, in terms of the employee or the foreign worker, there is a chance that the foreign worker will receive an exclusion order, which means that they will cancel their work permit and they will remove them from Canada, and they will become inadmissible to Canada for up to for 1 year. So for 1 year, that person cannot go back to Canada. So this is the generic answer to that. Obviously, when specific situations happens and when we are dealing with CBSA and IRCC for those issues, there are lots of negotiations, etc., etc. But that's a ton of energy that you need to put into this, a huge financial loss, and also being in an ambivalent situation oblivion situation for a while. So it is in your best interest that you upfront apply for permission to work outside that city. Okay, so the other one, hi Sarah, can parents who are visiting in Canada apply for a new visitor visa from within Canada if their multiple entry visa is expiring soon? Thank you. So generally speaking, the law in Canada is silent about where you can apply for visitor visa. In the past, we had Section 11 of the regulations that talked about this, but they removed this. So basically, now they don't talk about where you can apply for a temporary resident visa. So if somebody is inside Canada and their temporary resident visa is expiring and they want to apply for a new one, and if they apply online, generally speaking, they do not refuse the application because you are inside Canada. This is not like a study permit or work permit, because a study permit and work permit is clear, very clear. For work permit, for example, under Section 199 of the regulations, and for a study permit under Section 215 of the regulations, they clearly say who can apply for a study permit or work permit inside Canada. With visitor visa, there is no such restrictions. They can actually don't talk about this, and you can apply from inside Canada. Remember, if the parents want to remain in Canada, they just need an extension. But if they're considering to leave Canada and then come back, then they have to apply for a visit visa. But again, I don't know about the specifics of your case, but generally speaking, that's how it goes. Okay, so where did I go? So for example, you are a gay person from Iraq and nobody in Iraq knows that you are gay. You prove to IRCC that you are gay without anyone knowing it in Iraq, and PR will be approved. Why can't you travel back to your home country in this case? Again, you don't need to negotiate that with me, obviously. You have to negotiate it with the immigration authorities if something like that happens. But if a homosexual is in danger, or any member of LGBTQ community is in danger by going back to Iraq, that doesn't change when you become a permanent resident of Canada. You're still in danger, so as long as that person is in danger, that person won't travel back to their home country because they have the fear of persecution. If that fear of persecution is gone, then why should Canada offer that person protection? Simple. So if you didn't feel safe in the first place and you came to Canada and filed for refugee, then that should continue. Now, if suddenly you feel safe, then that's okay. It's okay for people to feel safe to go back to their home country. What is not okay is Canada offers them protection for something that they have no fear of. So let's say, for example, somebody has the fear of the darkness and we offer them a torch. So now that person has a torch or a flashlight. That person has a flashlight, so that person doesn't have the fear of the darkness anymore. Now imagine that fear is gone, or maybe the room is not dark anymore. Then in those both scenarios, that person doesn't need a flashlight anymore. You know what I mean? So again, it's okay if you're gay and you feel safe in your home country, but you shouldn't expect the immigration authorities of Canada to offer you protection for something that you have no fear of. This is the generic idea behind the protection under Section 97 of the Act, because Section 97 of the Act clearly says that you have a genuine fear of going back to that country. And if that fear is gone, then Section 97 doesn't apply to the person. And for that reason, Canada can cancel the protection at any point of time. Again, this is a very, remember, I repeat, this is a very generic answer to this situation because people's cases could be different. I give you an example. I had an Afghan client that had received protection, and she was actually holding a refugee travel document from Canada, and suddenly her father was dying. So he communicated that with the immigration authorities and let them know that this is the situation. She said that I still am fearful of going back to Afghanistan. However, because of my father dying, I want to take the risk and travel back to Afghanistan to be on his deathbed. And IRCC actually allowed her to go back to Afghanistan with the same travel document that they issued, and they told her not to go back to Afghanistan. So obviously, if special cases happen, we can talk to the immigration authorities, we can negotiate, we can ask for permissions, and they may issue the permissions. But generally speaking, the concept of protection is to offer protection to somebody who doesn't feel safe in their home country or wherever they are coming from. If they do feel safe, then why should they even go? Why should even Canada offers them protection? Another example would be, so let's say somebody is from a country that they don't feel safe. So say somebody is from Iran and that person doesn't feel safe in Iran, but however, that person currently lives in Azerbaijan. So does that person need protection from Canada because they feel unsafe in Iran? The answer is no, because that person currently is living in another country. They are not living in Iran to say that I'm fearful of Iran. That fear is meaningless right now because they have already given either protection by another country or they have legal status in another country and they can live in that country. This is different from people who are displaced. So if somebody is displaced, for example, from Iran to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is not offering them protection, and that person is hanging over there, then that we can resettle that person to Canada or another safe country. But if that person already has a status in Azerbaijan or have been offered protection in Azerbaijan, then their request to receive protection from Canada is meaningless. Okay. So let me make sure. Okay, so the other question is that for temporary visit, my family received Canada biometrics 6 months ago, but now on our new express entry biometrics is not shown. How can we tell IRCC that we already have biometrics? So generally speaking, the biometrics for temporary resident is not valid for permanent residents. So if somebody has a valid temporary resident biometrics, they cannot use it towards the biometrics for express entry. Having said that, because of the COVID-19 situation, in some cases IRCC accepts biometrics for temporary residents for express entry applicants. You need to visit IRCC website. If there's situation applies to you, you can have a printout of that and you can upload it. But generally speaking, you need to do biometrics. In terms of the payments, because usually the system automatically issues request the payments, then unfortunately you will end up paying the biometrics fee anyways. Can somebody later request a refund? Yes, that person may request a refund and say, look, based on this policy, I paid the biometrics fee, but I don't really need to do biometrics, so could you refund me? And then if they agree, they will refund you. So this is, again, a general answer to this question. Okay. So the other one. Hello, good morning. I have a spousal open work permit. Is it possible for me to travel back home? What documents I need to prepare? Is it possible for me? Oopsie. My message went back. I need to prepare. So is it possible for me to come back here in Canada? Thank you so much. Okay, so again, Rochelle, I cannot offer you immigration advice, but I can give you some general hints. First of all, when somebody is in Canada and they receive a work permit, because of a spousal sponsorship. That work permit allows that person to remain in Canada and work. But the work permit is not a visa. So it's not about leaving Canada and coming back. If that person has a valid visa to Canada, like a TRV or another, TRV for W/1 or W-1 W or S/1, etc. Any kind of temporary resident visas, then yes, that person may leave Canada and travel back to Canada. But if that person doesn't hold a valid temporary resident visa, the work permit on its own does not allow you to leave Canada and come back. And even if you look on the bottom of the work permit, it clearly says does not authorize re-entry. So you cannot use a work permit to re-enter Canada. The only exception is that if the person goes to the United States solely and then they try to travel back from the United States to Canada, that's the only time a person can use a work permit to go back to Canada. In other situations, unfortunately, the work permit does not allow re-entry. The person needs to either have a valid TRV or apply for a TRV. So that's number one. The other issue is that under Section 124 of the immigration regulations, when somebody is applying for in Canada class, that person qualifies for in Canada class because they reside in Canada with their spouse. In other words, that person is cohabiting with their spouse or common law partner inside Canada. If that person leaves Canada and doesn't reside in Canada, then the immigration officers could refuse the application. So leaving Canada for an in Canada class spousal applicant is a risky decision. So obviously, this doesn't mean that the person cannot travel for a short period of time outside Canada, but if the immigration officer comes to the conclusion that this person is not here in Canada anymore and Section 124 sub B does not apply to them, then they will immediately refuse the application. In most cases, they issue a procedural fairness letter and they ask where you are, but there are the slight chances that they refuse the application. So my usual advice to my clients for inland spousal applications is that remain in Canada for the duration of your application to being processed, unless something urgent happens and there is no way that you can not leave Canada. You have to leave Canada. So that's again, I don't know about the specifics of your case, so don't consider this as a immigration advice, but that's a general information. So Shamil Ibrahim, hi, I'm 45 years old. Is it difficult to get study visa after 35 years? How to convince visa officer in such cases? Thank you. So generally speaking, the officers do not care about the age of a person when they are applying for a study permit. What they do care is about the recency of their study. So in other words, if there is a huge gap between their previous study and the current study, then yes, that's troublesome because they say you didn't study for say 10 years, 5 years, 12 years, and then suddenly out of all these 200 countries in the world, you have picked Canada and you want to study in Canada. It doesn't make sense. So there is a chance that the officer will refuse the application under Section 216(1)(b) of the regulations because they say that we are not convinced that this is a genuine request for a study permit in Canada. So what are the solutions to that? One solution is recency. I mean, if I'm old and I haven't studied for a while, maybe I can go back to school in my home country and study something and then continue my studies in Canada. So for example, I do my master's and then for PhD apply for Canada, something like that. So that would be one solution to that. The other one would be, of course, an SOP, a very strong SOP or a study plan that basically convinces the officer that this is a real application for a study permit, you truly believe that you can advance your understanding by coming to Canada and studying in Canada, and you have absolutely no intention to overstay in Canada, file for refugee, or break the Canadian immigration law or any other laws. So that's a generic answer to that. So if there is a gap between the studies, that's probably number one reason for refusal of study permit applications. But you could either remove that gap by actually studying in your home country first, or another country first, and then coming to Canada, or by offering a very strong study plan that convinces the officer this is not a made-up effort to receive just a study permit, come to Canada and overstay or something like that. So the next one, hello, when do we expect express entry? So express entry is ongoing. They actually every other week or so, they are inviting a lot of people. The last time that they made the invitation, they invited close to 5,000 people, and the CRS score dropped to 300, I think 80 or something. The issue is that currently they only invite Canadian experience class. They do not invite federal skilled worker class or federal skilled trades class, partly because most of those applicants are outside Canada, and also the visa offices outside Canada, they do not work properly. So express entry doesn't become express entry, it becomes late entry. And to avoid that, they have decided not to invite federal skilled workers. When they will start inviting them, most likely when we see that the offices outside Canada start working normally, or at least to a great extent normally. So my multiple entry visa is expiring next month. If I apply for extension of my stay beyond the validity of my visa, will they approve, or do I need to apply for a new visitor visa? Obviously, Sunil, I don't know your situation, so I don't know whether they will approve your application or not. But if somebody is here inside Canada and they want to remain beyond the validity of their stay, for example, their stay expires in a month from now, then they may apply for an extension. And if they approve the extension, then they may remain in Canada. For as long as they have not made a decision on the application, you will have implied status and you may still remain in Canada. This has nothing to do with a visit visa. Visit visa is for crossing the border. The visitor record for remaining in Canada. These are two different concepts. Honestly, I cannot explain what is the difference right now, but very quickly, I mean, if I want to go into the details, I need 1 hour to explain it, but very quickly, if you want to stay in Canada, you need a visitor record, not a visit visa. If you want to travel back and forth from Canada, then you need a visit visa. These are two different concepts. And I know that usually when you enter Canada, they do not give you an actual visitor record, but they mark for how long you can stay in Canada. So Sonil says, thank you very much. The next question is from Menino Gomez. What happens if a Canadian citizen marries a person who has been sent back? Can the person end up coming back to Canada? Thanks. So the simple answer is it depends on the situation. I've had clients that they married somebody who was removed from Canada. So when you initiate the sponsorship application, you also need to resolve that removal issue. So if the removal order was a simple departure order, there's not much you need to do. If it was an exclusion order, you can either wait for 1 year when the exclusion order expires, or in terms of misrepresentation, 5 years when the exclusion order expires. Or alongside with the sponsorship application, you also need to submit an authorization to return to Canada, or an ARC application. So in other words, there will be two applications at the same time. Sometimes the removal is because of more serious issues, such as inadmissibility issues that last for a very long time. In those situations, we have to also try to resolve the underlying issue. For example, we need to apply for rehabilitation. if the offense was inside Canada, we need to apply for record suspension inside Canada. So there are so many different things that we need to explore. What are our options? So for example, you submit the application, and at the same time you also submit a rehabilitation application, an ARC application, and a PR application. And honestly, I don't know your case, but if you can just contact us privately. You can book an appointment with me, and we can explore the situation and see what would be the best package for you, if there is a package, which usually there is. It's just that we need to know what is the option, because sometimes we don't even go in the direction of sponsorship. We go in the direction of a TRP application. Sometimes we go in the direction of sponsorship, but we apply for humanitarian and compassionate consideration. Sometimes, as I mentioned, we need to apply for authorization to return to Canada. Sometimes we need to apply for rehabilitation, record suspension, you name it. So, hi Parsai, my age was wrong in old passport. I have used the old passport to apply before and was refused. Now I have new corrected passport. What can I do? So again, I cannot offer you advice here, but generally speaking, this needs to be clarified for the immigration authorities. I won't answer this question publicly, but if you want, you can book an appointment with me and I will tell you what are your solutions. So the next one is, hi sir, just want to ask if there are any chances to be included in the new policy to speed up my AIPP application for PR. I am NOC 44112 with AOR biometrics done. Please your input about this. So basically, I think what you are referring to is to the policy that they mentioned, that they will speed up processing of caregiver pilot applicants. Well, this is an announcement by the government, and what you can potentially do, generally speaking, you can potentially file through web form and remind them that maybe this also applies to you, and you never know, they could speed it up, but there's no guarantee. But you mentioned that you applied under AIPP, so is it I don't know what AIPP is. Atlantic Immigrant Pilot Program? Okay, so if it's the Atlantic Immigrant Pilot Program, it has nothing to do with that public policy. So had applied, but again, you could try. I mean, what is the worst case scenario? You submit a request for them to expedite the processing, and they will very likely will say no, but if they say yes, then you have one. So I had applied for renewal TFP for my from India in May 20, application on hold for COVID. Now want to apply for a study permit. What are the legalities? Please advise. So again, generally speaking, it's okay for a person to apply for multiple different kinds of visas. Obviously, if somebody doesn't want to pursue TRV, because when you apply for a study permit, they also will issue you a visit visa anyways, if they approve you. So if somebody has a TRV application and a study permit application, one option could be to withdraw the TRV application. It is okay if they have multiple applications at the same time, but if they withdraw the TRV application, they will be refunded, and also at the same time, some potential complications won't happen. Again, I don't know about the specifics of your case. If you want me to give you official advice, you can book an appointment with me. But generally speaking, it depends on the situation. Sometimes we withdraw the first application and we submit the second application. Sometimes we continue both applications at the same time. Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for attending this session. I'm in the car and it's really hot. So I'm gonna stop here, but please continue watching our videos on YouTube, and please also come back on Sundays at 10 o'clock. My name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I teach immigration courses at Ashton College. I'm a professor at Ashton College. I am also the author of the bestseller book 88 Tips on Immigration to Canada. You can visit 88tips.ca to purchase your copy. And hopefully next week we will be more formal. I think it was a change of atmosphere, so it's good. But see you next week. Thank you again. Bye now.